Hey guys, my name is Matsimio, and today I want to do something a little bit different and go over some operators that I think have a high chance of being added into Rainbow Six Siege. This is something that I've thought about for a while. I mean, I'm constantly thinking about this. You guys are constantly sending me Sunday mailbox questions that are along these same lines, and so I wanted to delve into some that I really do think could add an interesting dynamic into the game and really mix things up. And so to start things off, I would love to have an offensive operator who could barricade doors and windows. Now I realize on paper, this doesn't sound all that impressive. You got operators like Fuse who can nuke the objective room. You've got Sledge who can use his hammer to get through basically any wall. Then you got this guy who can barricade a door, which is the same thing that everyone on defense could do. But in reality though, I think this would have a dramatic impact on the way that we play the game. If you've ever been roaming around on defense and you had that one random teammate that for whatever reason would start to barricade everything around the map, if you try to go for a flank against the enemy and you come across that barricade, you kind of have to give up on that flank. Now you could try to tear it down or you could break it open with a melee, but if the enemy is even somewhat observant of the surroundings, they're gonna have a massive advantage against you. You don't have the luxury of drones on defense. You can't scout it out really quickly, identify if it's clear, and then move on in like you can on offense. Maybe you could get lucky and a Valkyrie camera could be in a corner and you could scout it out that way, but more often than not, you're gonna pretty much have to break down that barricade, leave yourself incredibly exposed because you're in the doorway, they're gonna know where you are, but you're gonna have no idea where they are inside of that room, and that's probably gonna result in your death. Now, of course, it does have its downsides. You need to try to barricade a doorway, which is going to leave you exposed. If someone is in the wing in the other room, for example, and they hear you start to barricade the door, all they need to do is whip around really quickly and then shoot you in the face while you're going through that process. There is kind of a risk-reward system here. And while I know that we do already have claymores, I realize that that is a counter to roamers. This would just take it a step further. You could even combine the two, place a barricade down and then a claymore right behind that, so that when they tear it down, they immediately die in a nice fireball explosion. Now, the one concern I have with someone like this is that it has the potential to be too powerful. If you're able to constantly barricade every door behind you as you make your way towards the objective, it will hamper and make it very difficult for defense to get those flanks off. Flanking and roaming is a key component of Rainbow Six Siege. You can't have everyone on the objective, or usually it's not a good job to have everyone on the objective, because a lot of the offensive operators are incredibly powerful. You get a Fuse in there, you get a Buck above, he starts nuking everyone above through his little murder holes, you're gonna have a hard time being successful. And so if they introduced this barricade boy, it might be pushing things too far into the favor of the offensive team because it just simply makes roaming around not a viable option. Only time would tell. All in all though, while I realize he's not the flashiest operator, he doesn't have the coolest gadget, it takes the existing mechanics that we're all comfortable with, everyone knows how to barricade, and it just gives it to the offensive team. Maybe he only has access to 2 or 3 of these, so it's not just blatantly overpowered and he can't just fortify every single wall from him to the objective. That seems to be too much, but as long as it was done properly, I truly do think this would have a pretty big impact on the way that we counter roamers and the way that we play the game. Another operator that I would love to see is someone who can reinforce hatches from below. There are some objectives that are a nightmare to defend on defense because of the hatches. Probably the best example of this is when you're on Clubhouse. When you're defending the bedroom, it's already cramped. You don't have a lot of options to hunker down and defend it from the objective room itself, but as soon as they open up the hatches above the office and the gym, it's even more restrictive. You've got like a hallway, a staircase, and the bathroom, and that's it for cover. And so the reason why I like the idea of bringing in someone who can reinforce hatches from below is that it just gives defense more options and a little bit of breathing room. Let's say offense only brought 1 thermites. They then need to make some decisions. Do we open up the hatches? Well, then that leaves that side reinforcement completely blocked off. Do we open up that side wall and only 1 hatch? Then that allows defense to adapt their strategy to what offense is doing. I like that dynamic. I like that give and take. If they open up only 1 of the hatches, they can mosey on over to another room and defend it from that location. Now, the one issue that we do run into, and the reason why Ubisoft may never add someone like this into Siege, is that a lot of the maps were not designed around the concept of being able to reinforce these hatches. they weren't. They were never probably designed with that in mind, because that's simply just not a possibility currently. And so there's probably some objectives, there's some maps where this just wouldn't work, or it would be too powerful. You need to have some flanking routes, and some of these hatches are needed to be open for you to actually approach the objective viably. Now, of course, a big counter to this is, well, just run Thermite and Hibana. But this puts more of an emphasis on those two operators. They're already incredibly powerful. You already need them almost every single round, and they become more of a necessity. All in all, though, if you can't tell, I like this idea. It would make some of the objectives more viable, it would mix up the meta a bit, and we could finally see some of these objectives being played instead of just basement all the time when you're playing on maps like Clubhouse. Another operator that I would love to see introduced is someone on offense who has the ability to shoot cameras through walls. Now, of course, this isn't destroy enemy cameras, because that would be silly. Everyone on offense does that. But someone who has some sort of contraption who can fire through a wall or through the floor and then peer through it like a normal drone, scout out the room through this camera, and then go from there. A huge component of Rainbow Six Siege is gathering information. At the end of the day, you do need to win the firefight, you need to get that headshot, but if you know the enemy's exact location, you know where they're camping, and they have no idea where you are, you got a pretty big advantage against them when you round the corner and you just snipe them in the face when they're not expecting it. This camera would allow you to do that. Now, I know this is the same thing that drones do, but a lot can happen to a drone. They can get shot, they can get jammed, they can get nowhere near the objective because of those factors. And so I just love the concept of shooting one of these things in a floor, you go above the objective, scout it out really quickly, and take advantage of that knowledge. It just sounds incredibly cool. Another defensive operator that I could see being added to the game is one that can electrify or jam hatches from below. If you haven't noticed the trend, I really like the idea of being able to counter Hibana. Hibana is incredibly powerful right now, and I don't think that she necessarily needs a direct nerf. I don't think that they need to do anything along those lines, but her ability to open up 3 hatches basically all by herself, she doesn't need to rely on anyone else like Thermite does when he opens up a wall. I just think it would be nice if there was a way to slow her down a little bit and require a bit more teamwork. Now, to ensure that he doesn't make Mute and Bandit obsolete, I feel like he would only have access to maybe 2 or 3 of his gadgets. That way, Mute and Bandit are still going to be the preferred pick for stopping people getting through walls, while he is, of course, going to stop that progress for hatches. Now, the one thing I can think of for why Ubisoft may not want to introduce someone like this is kind of the same problems that we talked about earlier. It puts more of an emphasis on particular operators. In this case, Thatcher would become much more important, but also if offense can't get through these reinforced hatches, there are some objectives where it's required. There's not a lot of access routes to begin with, and if you're locked out completely from a very important flanking route, it's going to be hard for offense to win on those objectives, and that might be pushing things too far for the defensive team. It's kind of hard to tell. Now, one way they could work around this is by introducing another Thatcher type operator, but I found it very difficult to come up with something unique that was different from Thatcher, but sort of did the same thing. The only thing I could think of is maybe someone who places down an EMP or essentially a mute charge, but for offense, so that they can place that outside of the wall reinforcements, and so that anything on the other side no longer has that jamming or the electrified capabilities anymore, and then they can open that on up. The thing about that, though, is that just seems like that would make Thatcher obsolete. I mean, Thatcher could still throw his grenades into the objective room and deal with other obstacles that are further away, but if someone's trying to perform the bandit trick, he plays this thing down and that makes it obsolete, and so why would you ever want to play as Thatcher anymore? It would be quite challenging. And so I want to know what you guys think about all of this stuff. These are some operators that I truly do believe would change up the game, mix things up, but also have a high percentage chance of being seen in an upcoming DLC. I mean, I could be completely off my rocker, and you guys, I'm sure, will let me know down below in the comments, but let me know your guys' thoughts. Do you agree with me? Is there some other operator ideas that you would like to see introduced? I know some people have talked about bringing in a offensive caveira, essentially, someone who is very stealthy, opens up doors and windows without making a lot of noise. I know some other people have talked about bringing in like a motion sensor grenade where they toss it into the objective room and it pings everyone's location. There's a lot of great ideas out there, and so if you guys think of an operator that you think has a high chance of changing the game, but also could be introduced in the future. Let everyone know down below because I'm definitely interested. But yeah, guys, that is it for today's video. We actually did a video like this about a year and a half ago before Valkyrie and a lot of those operators were introduced. And luckily enough, and I think it did come down to a lot of luck, we actually got Valkyrie and Hibana right. I wanted an operator who could make murder holes in reinforced walls, and while it's not exactly what we got, because Hibana can of course open up a gigantic hole, allowing her team to get into the objective, I thought it was kind of cool that we sort of got that one right, and I thought it would be fun to do another one of these videos and maybe get lucky again. But yeah, guys, until tomorrow, have a good one, and take it easy.